I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Focus on Norton series, sponsored by the Norton Republican Town Committee. Now, we started this series 2 years ago, and it has been a success. And I'm Paul Ruwazi, chairperson of the Norton Republican Town Committee. Focus on Norton's goal is to inform the people of Norton what is happening in our community and continue to grow our community into an informed electorate. Our guest speakers are those charged with serving our community, both locally and statewide. We have them tell their story and explain the positions they hold. This event can be viewed on local cable TV via the video media menu on the Norton Media website. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to remind you that in 2025, we already will have some speakers. On January 13th, the Superintendent of Schools, Jennifer O'Neill, and February 10th, Police Chief Brian Clark. I'm hoping also to get the Wheaton College president here. We've already opened the door there, and she's supposed to get back to me. Our guest speaker tonight is Paul DiGiuseppe. He's the Director of Planning and Economic Development in Norton. He's on his second stint, that's what he called it in his note to me, returning in April of 2024. In his first tour, he was involved with the development of the Norton Master Plan, zoning changes within the village center, and helped obtain certain grants in an effort to redevelop the former Reed and Barton site on Elm Street, and was staffed to the planning board. In round two, Paul is hoping to see, still working to make the redevelopment of Reed and Barton a reality. He's also working on the very subject of MBTA Communities multifamily effort to see where the community would like to see this multifamily housing. In 2025, Paul will begin an effort to focus on helping our small businesses. He grew up in Rhode Island. 8 years ago, he moved back to this area, having lived in Tallahassee, Florida, and Austin, Texas. So welcome, Paul.
Thank
and
you.
By the way, he was our pioneer, was our first speaker of Focus on Norton when we started.
No kidding.
Yes, so he's back. All right.
Wow, well, thank you.
Okay, Paul.
And hearing the lineup coming up, I'm just the warm-up act for some very important people, good people too. So again, thank you. I'm Paul, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm just going to say a few words. Paul's done a good introduction, but I always feel like these are better served when you get to ask questions. But as Paul in the intro mentioned, there are two things I've been primarily working on since I've been back. One, I kind of started, me and some other folks, about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's Reed and Barton. And then one was handed to us by the state that we're getting through and moving forward again. So I'm going to start with the MBTA communities. That was a state mandate to try to require communities like Norton to have a zoning district that allows multifamily, what they call by right, which means can't issue a special permit. It would be approved by a site plan approval by the planning board. And as you probably remember, at Fall Town Meeting, we tabled it. So last week, we actually had an event where many of you came to it, and I thank you for that. People were asked to show on a map where they would like to see this district. And so that information is up online. We have an MBTA page for the town of Norton. That information is up there. Starting in January, the planning board then is going to be looking at the results of where people wanted to see this, and they're going to start identifying parcels that we will cover with that zoning district. So we are planning to put that on our Springtown meeting. So as you know, especially in my world, when you get ready for Springtown meeting, it's accelerated. I feel like I'm already behind the curve with it, and it's not even the end of December, but they're going to have to move fairly quickly, and but they will. I think we had some good results. For those of you who were there, you'll see there were three areas that were the clear winners. Norton Glen, Mansfield Ave North is another one, and then Wheaton College was the third one. So we'll go forward with that, and then the planning board will ultimately make a recommendation. And in fact, the select board has a representative to this group that I need to get with, and I need to get a FinCom member to participate as well on this, so we can make sure as we can go forward as aligned as possible. Reed and Barton, over on Elm Street, pointing the wrong direction. That's been an ongoing project for us since before I got here in 2018. There's been a lot of work done. Good news is that we had received a grant for $3.5 million toward the construction of sewer along Elm Street. That too was tabled back at our fall town meeting, but we're working now with the developer to help finance the remaining balance of it, so it'll significantly reduce costs to people on Elm Street. I don't know the details. They haven't been final, but the town manager's working with the developer on that. That's a big project. It's a dilapidated site, and it has been for 10 years. And a developer has come along 2 years ago, rezoned the property from industrial to village commercial because she wanted to do mixed-use development, top of the shop housing with commercial on the first floor and residential above. We don't know what the plans are yet. The big step is to get sewer funded and constructed. We do that, we've moved the needle far over to the side of this is going to happen. So I wish I had more clear news on that, but the town manager's actively working with the developer on that. And then just finally, one of the things I started doing before I left a few years ago was starting to build a network of our small businesses and larger businesses. But I haven't been able to get to that, but once MBTA is done, I'm going to throw myself into this program where we really want to start developing relationships with our businesses and connect people. It's all about connections and connecting businesses to resources, to each other. So I'll be working with the new chair of the Economic Development Committee. We talked the other night at the event. We have a lot of the same goals, but we want to start having more things. Like when I worked in the town of Fairhaven, we had a successful business social at Town Hall. We had about 20 businesses that showed up, and they were there for 2 hours, and they met and talked with each other. We brought in some business experts to talk about how their programs help people. In fact, I know one of the programs, they offer free training to businesses. A couple of them have signed up and are probably in the program now, but that to me is really where my passion is. It's evolved over the years, but focusing on economic development and helping grow, not just try to attract companies here, but what can we do to help our existing ones? This town is filled with small businesses, many under 5 employees. They're struggling, and they can't do everything, but there are organizations out there that will help them out, and I want to do a better job of connecting them to it. And there was also in the last year or so, an organization called the Norton Business Association that's formed. It's still new. I want to work with them and help them grow. They would be essentially like a local chamber, and we just want to get them working together better as a community, helping them coordinate better with the town. But again, ultimately, it's if they have a challenge, let's try to find where they can go to get help. And that's what I'm hoping for. But got couple things to do before I get to that. So I know I'm flying through this, but I know some of you are going to have questions. So I'd rather have that conversation than just talk at you. So if I can open the floor.
Go ahead. Yes. Come on, guys.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for everything that you do. It's very, very much appreciated. I'm kind of curious when the state issues a mandate for us to, to do this project, what rights does the town have to say no? Or another way of putting it is, what happens if the town says no in the spring?
So, right, so for the MBTA, there's still a lot up in the air about that, but some towns have denied it. There are repercussions to us, and it's laid out in Mass General Law that there are some grants that we would no longer be eligible for. And that's very clear. And in fact, the lawsuit that's going on between the Commonwealth and the town of Milton didn't even dispute that the 4 grants, like the MassWorks grant, were no longer. But it was what the state said in their guidelines that expanded the amount of funding that we wouldn't be. They said that the review would be used to, if we're not compliant, we couldn't receive funding for it. So that would be the repercussion is what are we, if we don't approve it, are we willing to accept it? Now I'll say, and I'm completely biased on this, I want to be upfront, those grants are a big tool for me. Again, we've used some of those grants to get funding for projects at Reed and Barton. In fact, we did two rounds of assessment, contamination assessment there. Again, I think that helped really start the ball rolling on that. And the $3.5 million grant was the MassWorks grant, which would now be going forward. We're keeping that grant. That grant is ours, but if we're not compliant, we won't be eligible to apply down the road. So, but there are people, we've presented this and they're like, that's not a big enough concern for us. So, so we could opt. The Attorney General's been very assertive about this and trying to get towns to comply. I also look at this as how can we create win-wins? And I think last week gave us some good momentum. There were some, the 2 areas at Norton Glen and Mansfield Avenue, the northern end of it. I think there are some things that we could do that people could be comfortable with. My job is how do we get it compliant? When they issued that, it's like, okay, what do we have to do? But how do we do it in a way that's, good for us and people can be comfortable with? Yes?
So I understand correctly that to be compliant requires the zoning change, but that's different from actually having a developer and going forward.
Yeah. All we're being asked to do is create this zoning district. It doesn't mean anything will ever get built. It doesn't require us to do anything more than just create the zoning district. And the states did a couple things that I thought were problematic, and it's something that has been an issue in this town. One of which was they said it had to be 50 acres and 15 units an acre. And I'm like, when I read that a few years ago, I was like, oh boy, this is, in my world, in 30 years of doing this work, you never lead with density, you don't lead with unit counts, because just like what happened here, people go, oh, look at the impact of the schools and the traffic, and that was a big mistake on their part to do that in my mind. But again, nothing has to be built, there's no time frame for it, and I think the areas that were selected last week, if the town goes forward with it, gives us some opportunities for some, good limited redevelopment in areas that already have residential. But we have to see, and as the board starts going forward in January, again, we want the public there. We want you all there to weigh in on this and tell us what you're comfortable with. We want to go forward with a plan that we think has a really good chance of passing at town meeting. Yes?
Well, that Reed and Barton grant, does it eventually expire? And can you just look into your crystal ball? Will it be if anything ever gets developed there, will it be, a combination of retail and apartments?
Yeah.
You can have on the first floor a dry cleaner, and upstairs you can have apartments. I don't know, what do you What do you see?
So we do have to spend the money. The project has to be completed by the end of June of '26. So we have to start that project soon. So we're waiting on some information from the developer, and we're going to have to go to a town meeting, of whether it's special or spring. Spring might be late, but we need that funding approved at town meeting. But I think one of the things that's going to dictate that it's going to be commercial on the first floor is there's some level of contamination in that ground. Again, our study showed it wasn't anything bad, but the level of cleanup is higher when it's residential on the first floor versus commercial. And so that's probably going to be a factor why, if she does, that she would consider doing commercial on the first floor, because you still have a level of cleanup you have to do, but it's not the same level as if you're doing residential. And I guess the thought being, if you have people living on a first floor of an old brown contaminated site, you don't want to have, you want to clean it to a higher standard than a commercial site where people might not be there as long. But we'll see. But if things go forward, if the sewer gets approved and she takes over the property, then she's going to have to go to planning board for special permits to show what they want to do.
Paul, who is she now? She's been in this thing since the beginning? She's been involved?
About 2 years.
Okay.
She came on my last year here,
And
so.
what is her title? What's her?
So Ann Brensley's with Devco North America.
Devco.
She was at, when we rezoned it back a couple years ago, she spoke at both planning board and at town meeting.
Mhm.
So they're, hopefully, I hope, because we've put a lot of work into this, we want to see that get done. So I'm hoping, we're right at the end, we're right at the cusp, so. Yes?
Why did the town table that sewer project?
Because
It was time sensitive.
it was, and we were going to go forward, but right before then was when she made a proposal to help provide more funding. And it was that week, or within the week, and we just didn't have time to change anything. And we just didn't want to create that chaos. So that gave the town manager time to start negotiating with the developer. But that's why it was taken off. Yes, Roger.
Paul, just wondering if you could talk about how much commercial and industrial land is left in Norton to be developed?
It's on our website. I don't know in terms of acreage anymore. I maintain a list. I started it a few years ago, and fortunately a few properties have come off the list. But I can tell you there's only a couple of properties left that are sizable that are on sewer. One of them's the DOT site, where their salt shed is up at 495 and 123, and then the other, as many of us who followed MBTA were aware, was the TPC site. But those are the only large sites. And actually, they're the only two large sites left, but there's 10 or a dozen other sites scattered around town, don't have sewer. They have wetlands and some environmental restrictions, so it's getting tighter. It's getting tighter to find commercial sites in town. I have to start refocusing on that too. Start of the new year. Part of my job was to promote the development of those sites. I'm trying to a big part of my job is to try to bring companies in and build up our commercial tax base. We've had some successes, but we need to do more. But it's good, and that's a tough thing because we just want to be able to get some good companies back in and get some sizable developments. But looking at other than those two big sites, you're going to probably see buildings in the 20 to 30,000 square foot range on these other sites, or some range, appropriate to the parcel itself. Yeah. Oh, Bob, then Ralph.
Thanks for coming, Paul. 2019, we developed a new regional 1 mile radius village concept in the center of town. A lot of questions being asked about what happened to the old bank site. Gentleman who bought the library
Yeah.
also bought the bank site, and recently bought half of the property that Mr. Butch Rich had.
Mhm.
Can you tell people what's going on? But it seems like every day someone asks me, what the heck's going on there?
Well, I can, yeah, we have one developer who owns those properties, and he owns the old library. You know, I have to say, when we sewered it and we rezoned it, a couple of those properties sold. Right? Bless you, Wheaton had owned the library for 30 years, and it was mothballed. But as soon as we sewered it and rezoned it, then it was purchased. And if you've gone by there, you'll see a terrific job that they're doing renovating that site. And apparently they're getting close to getting a tenant in there. In fact, we just had a proposal at Planning Board last week. Well, they just created a new lot, but they're trying to, they want to add more parking over there. I don't have the details on the bank site, but as you know, you go by there and you don't see the bank there anymore, or the vault, which somehow he got rid of that, which is the toughest thing. They're looking at some sort of mixed-use building there, as what we talked about. We don't have details yet, but that'll have to go in front of the planning board. So, I don't know the numbers on it, but he's trying to do. So when you're in Village Center Core, you have to do either all commercial or a top of the shop type of building. And we only applied it to about 40 parcels, but we were trying to create a gathering place for people there and try to get more commercial spaces. So it takes a while, but we've already had a couple of positive changes there with the library and then with the bank site. I'm not sure what they're proposing to do down at the former Rich property. I don't think there is. My conversation with them didn't go into much detail about that. So, but we're seeing some positive movement there, and I'm hopeful that if those two sites really click, that we'll see some other positive changes over there and get more people in there. That was always the goal, was to try to create more commercial space and just people, be less of a grab and go type of place and be a place where people might sit down more. So hopefully, we're seeing, actually kind of surprised it happened this quickly, that some of these things happen. But sometimes that's all you need. You look at downtowns all around this, Massachusetts, it was one developer who had the vision and the guts and the resources to do it, and all of a sudden you can get a pretty nice renovation of an area. Yes. Oh, no, we had Ralph. I'm sorry, Ralph.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then Paul.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold mine.
Okay.
One of our largest landowners in town is Wheaton. Does the phone ring very often? Do you have a pretty good relationship there?
I've had some.
Yeah.
That's another thing on the to-do list, but I know the town manager speaks with them a lot. But I need to start getting, I have in my mind, not just in my mind, but on a to-do list of things and people I need to start coordinating with in terms of the economic development aspect of it. But they're certainly a big player in this.
Well, academia is undergoing a lot of changes. They can't afford to be what they used to be. I mean, the nursing school.
I think the students can afford it.
Yeah.
Or the parents, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a world I don't really. Yeah. Oh, yes, Ralph.
The Reed and Barton, I watched a documentary from Gorman Silver out of Rhode Island, and the chemicals that were used there. This is not to create an issue. It's to bring it to the forefront as people are looking at that Reed and Barton nicely settled piece of property, but nobody knows what's in that ground. And more importantly, we have an ongoing issue with Turtle Brook of 440B affordable housing, which is on 123, and all that water, if it's contaminated, runs right through, like filling up a football field with that polluted water. My question, what if nothing happens to Reed and Barton and everybody just kind of like says, I can get by in Quincy, I can get by in Bridgewater. Does that remain looking like it looks now? Or will those buildings come down and we'll worry about the building on Turtle Brook?
So
20
this
years,
is,
it's
this
been
is
sitting there
where,
and it changed hands 8 times.
so this is where the sewer plays a huge role. The sewer makes or breaks this site, in my mind. If we get the sewer, you know, this developer is certainly, you know, all indications are she's going for it. But you know how deals happen too, it could fall apart. But I think if we have sewer and we're committed to it, somebody's gonna get there. So once somebody takes ownership of that site, now they're responsible. The problem's been over the last 10 years, nobody's owned it. It went into
Correct.
receivership, you know, bankruptcy, town never owned it. We did what we could, but we can't clean it up legally. You know, the town decided some years ago we didn't want this property. We could have taken it, but we didn't. And, you know, we're assuming, you know, we've done what we can, but our goal has always been to make it attractive so somebody takes it, so then it is responsible. Now, there've been a couple of assessments on that site. There is some missing information. There's going to need to be some, my understanding is there needs to be some additional assessment work, I think. But there has to be cleanup too. I know one area was a challenge was we don't know what's immediately under some of the buildings because we couldn't put a monitoring well because they were concerned if they start drilling that well, the ceiling could collapse. So they weren't allowed, we didn't allow our consultants to put it there. But we had wells all around the buildings and there were things associated with the activities, you know, solvents were in the ground, but nothing that triggered a, you know, that it was a serious, you know, cleanup that we can't, you know, it's not a Superfund site. But there's a gap in some of it, but no one seems to think that it's going to be serious, but you don't know until you unearth it. So, but once a person takes ownership of it, they're going to be liable to clean it up. And that means tear it down. I mean, there's nothing in that, none of those buildings are salvageable. They've all been deemed by the Board of Survey to be demolished.
The large obscene building that's next to Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, did they get a height variance on that?
They did. It's a 40B.
40B?
It's a 40B, and I believe they did.
Okay.
That was a couple years ago. I was here when it was approved, but I think there was a height
Is that
variance.
now the new height? Or is it building by building by building?
Well,
Because if it's a change of the ZBA laws, anybody who wants to have a piece of property and build on it, we could end up looking like Brockton, 16 stories high.
well,
With
we haven't changed the heights of our zoning code at all.
Well, no, we changed them for Wheaton College when they put the gym up. I was on the planning board at that time.
Well, they might have granted a height variance.
We held them up for 2 years because
Okay.
they wanted 47, and then we said, no, it's 43, that's it. You're not special.
Yeah, but
And by holding them up, they then finished the product and went along with.
But I think the ZBA granted them a height variance, but if that's the case, and that's allowed under 40B law, but that doesn't set a precedent for anywhere else. I mean,
Important.
yeah, because if the zoning is still 35 feet or 40 feet, you can build up to that.
Correct.
But the variance didn't trigger a change in the building heights across the board.
So grandfathering on that particular piece of property, if I wanted to build on my property, which is the housing authority's property right now,
Yeah.
not my property, their property, they can go, that builder has to purchase that property from us, because we own it. Does that mean that he does not, did we protect the grandfathering of the height variance? It's 44 now. The guy next to the old Roach Brothers is higher.
I think, but
Well, it's visual
it's a big
higher,
building,
yeah.
sure.
I haven't, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go through, you or whoever at the Housing Authority site will go through the 40B process.
I don't want to get into the weeds because.
I mean, they need to design it and see how it works with the zoning over there, but they have every opportunity to go through the ZBA and ask for whatever variances they need. Doesn't guarantee they get it. And the difference too was back when the Norton Links, the one next to McDonald's, came through, we were under 10% of our subsidized housing. That project put us over 10. But they were great to work with too. There was no tough negotiation with them on it. So, but the difference now is we are over 10%. So, but if it's our ZBA is a very reasonable group, and if there's a reasonable proposal, we'll work with them. Yes, sir.
Paul, I guess a couple questions back to Reed and Barton. What level AUL with Mass DEP is that property?
Sorry,
Do we know?
AUL?
The AUL, yeah, the access use limitations. That's
Oh,
the contamination.
I'm not aware that they have any. The parking lot on Cross Street has some pretty significant limitations, but I'm not aware that the site at 47 Elm has any limitations.
But there are monitoring wells,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
the results of those show a basic level. There's obviously, as you know, multiple levels of contamination.
Yeah, there's some. I'm not a scientist, but it was our consultants that did the studies. They were all posted up online. So, but nothing, and so the developer certainly knows all of that too. So,
Well, and that's why I asked, because if some of those AULs cannot be lifted with DEP,
yeah,
then certain types, residential, other
Right.
uses can never be.
can't be
On
put
that
there.
site.
Yeah, residential on certain levels of contamination, they will not allow.
Daycares,
Right.
churches, any.
It
assembly
limits
pla-
significantly what you can do, but that's not the case here.
Okay.
Again, there's
we know
that gap. There is that gap. We don't know exactly what's under the buildings, but our consultant also did research in the types of work that they were doing at that site for years and didn't come across anything that was
Giant red flag.
No, but again, as you know how things go, sometimes and I never want to say there's nothing there. We can positively say that when all of that's finished.
Yeah.
But at this
There's
point,
a lot
there's
of
nothing
money
holding them
leading
up.
to that. That's my concern. There's a lot of money leading up to that. What do we already know from those monitoring wells? Are they at a level? There's
Yeah.
layers of AUL restrictions.
Yeah, but at this point, they could do a mixed-use building from what we know.
And that's why commercial, to provide that additional layer of separation.
Right.
In the first level, the separation between the residential.
Right. So they can do that, and it impacts the amount of cleanup they have to do. But they'll have to cap it. They'll have to cap it one way or the other, but yeah.
So with that, that way it doesn't migrate or anything else, can't be disturbed. And when it's encased, it supposedly is good forever. But can you walk us through, I guess step by step, kind of leading to what Mr. Anderson mentioned, that grant, in a perfect world, developer and the town make an agreement. We start moving forward. What's the next steps in the process, if you can walk us through those steps?
Sure, and this is new territory for me too. I mean, this is the first, these projects take years to get done, and I'm just happy where we're at. So get the sewer going, and presumably she takes over the site. We'll just say her for an example. So they'll have to finish, they're gonna have to, finish any assessment for contamination. Then when they do that, they're gonna have to move forward with removal of it. They're gonna have to remove contamination. Their expense, we can help partner, we can help write grants, but one thing we should keep in mind, if we're not compliant with MBTA, that it would hurt our ability to, even if a private party applies for it, I saw this when I was in Middleborough, the state was not caring that it wasn't the town applying for it when we were not compliant there. So we have to bear that in mind, that could affect, the MBTA compliance could affect grants like that where a private party is applying for grant money.
Okay.
You know, because if they're applying, yeah. So, but then anyway, they have to get funds to remove contamination, and at that point, then they're having to work up the designs for the plans, what they're going to do, and at that point they have to go to planning board. You know, the size of that's going to trigger a special permit or two. Then they'll have to go through that public hearing process. So we'll notice all the abutters, you know, within 300 feet of the site and invite them to that meeting. And, you know, hopefully we can, my hope is, I always hope for win-win-wins. And I just hope we can get this through, that everyone's, as much as possible, can be happy with it.
So with that being said, let's walk it back just a little bit. So from here, moving forward, just for clarity on the question regarding the timeline for the expiration of that Mass Works grant. That's just for the sewer construction, that's not for the project, the whole project itself. Just
No.
for clarity on that too. So the priority is the sewer project. With the developer coming to the table, offering concessions to the 51 or 57 directly affected
Right.
residents to mitigate their potential financial impact of a betterment. And then we have to go, you were saying, to town meeting in spring. What are we bringing in spring for an ask?
Well, I personally, I hope it's quicker than that, because we got to start construction on it. But that's yet to be negotiated. And you know, as a select board member, you're going to be negotiating that. So I just haven't seen what a proposal has been. But we know they're making an offer to help offset the costs. So, but once that's, so are you asking then, I guess
I'm just trying to prove the point, time is of the essence.
time is absolutely of the essence. You know, our engineer had already put out bids, got a bid for construction. I haven't spoken with them in a little while. I mean, I don't oversee them, but they might have to ask for an extension from the contractor. You know, it's possible. You know, we really need to start going on it.
Yeah.
A year and a half sounds like a long time, but as you know, you're in development. It isn't.
Development,
Not at all.
No,
especially of that scale.
right. It's a big project. So, yes, Bob.
Just to follow up to Mr. Rich's question, that parcel has, it's like 3 different parcels. You've got the main parcel, which is the old mill site, which involves land on the other side of the water also, up on Cross Street. Then you've got the old contamination site, which was part of your leaching field down by the river.
Right.
On the opposite side of Cross Street, and then across the street you have the old parking lot.
Right.
When this developer, I hope, when this developer who's working with a bankruptcy court, and not the town or any other government facility I'm aware of, when they buy that, they buy it all? Because it's 3 different lots. Are they just trying to buy 47, or are they gonna buy all of it? Do you know?
I can say, I think I can say with certainty they're not going to take the lot on Cross Street, the old parking lot there.
Well, I
That
have
one
a
has
problem with
significant restrictions.
I have a problem with that, because if you're gonna buy it, the town has already invested a lot of money in this, our own money, not just state money. We put $200,000 into it. If a developer's gonna come and buy the property from the bankruptcy court, they should buy it all.
Okay,
Why
well-
should the town be hung up? We're gonna end up with that.
And it might be, I might be mistaken with it. I know the big interest is the big parcel.
Yeah, and the parcel across the street where the old parking lot is, actually, I kind of visualize that as a couple of freestanding houses maybe in the future. And that would make
Yeah.
perfect sense to put something like that
And,
there.
and we never rezone that. That's still residential 60, so it could be, it could be. I probably shouldn't have spoken out in the cross street, but, I just know that that's a pretty, that's a site with significant restrictions on it, but again, as the select board, and I don't know how that works, but she'll go through the bankruptcy courts, and it might be parcel by parcel. I don't know.
So there's monitoring wells on the lot on Cross Street as well?
Yes, sir.
I think so.
There is.
There are monitoring wells. I don't remember if that was the grant that we received. It might be. It was a few years ago.
That was before the last
Yeah,
attempt by the DEP and the EPA to clean up that area.
yeah,
That water across the street on Cross Street was first. That was years ago.
right, yeah,
And there are some test wells in there. But again, we don't want the town to come to a position like we did with Schrack years ago, with landfill, where you've got a bank saying, okay, you can buy 47, you can buy the piece of land across the street. What, you don't want to buy that, that's okay. And then the bank walks away from it. Eventually, who's responsible is us. And I'm hoping that the select board will keep that in mind when they're negotiating this deal. That if you want it, you gotta take it all. Don't just piecemeal it, don't give me the cake, and then the crumbs are across the street. We don't want those. We gotta sell it as a package. You take it all. We shouldn't have put the town in position to have to be responsible for that in the future. And by the way, that's the Rumford River. That goes right through my property. So I understand the concern about it, but I know they've tested it a number of times. There's nothing in the water down my way. I don't know how far down it goes, but it's just something I'm concerned about. As a
Yeah,
citizen, I think
sure.
we have to be concerned
well, we
about
don't want to have,
any kind of contaminated sites here in Norton, and the impact it might have in the future.
right. Yes, Ralph?
Paul, are you privy to the fact that the Norton Housing Authority is working on the negotiations of affordable housing where the leaching fields are?
Yeah, for the proposed 40
Have you
feet.
been asked by Missy, the executive director, to?
Yeah, we've spoken about it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. One of the things that we did, we had to close the leaching field, period. It was costing us a lot of money. I don't want to throw out a number because it'll shock you. So it was broken. But in the process of the negotiations, we watered and sewered the high school, came up the street and sewered the Norton Housing Authority, and went to 123 because we wanted to split the sewerage. Middle school did not have enough to keep it running properly.
right.
And now we had the J. Barrows Tri-Town water sewerage project.
Yeah,
Here's my question. Our executive director, who came from the contracting lifeline in the family, said, you're going to need a written contract if you're thinking of building housing where that leaching field is. And we met with the town's attorneys, the state's attorneys, and the housing authority's attorneys, and determined that we needed a caveat that said, no matter what happens, we're going to build there, reserved water for us. And had we not had that contract, we wouldn't be talking about it. Point in order. Are you going to be that specific looking at the town with the same love that we had for the sewerage project? Because if we didn't sewer Norton, we wouldn't have any of this building going on. Do you need more help? You don't have to answer that here. But if you need more help, I would rather see money go toward you and your office for an economic, for an engineer, for things that you need so that you're not walking around with a knapsack full of things to do.
So, Ralph, I think, you've hit on something that's been really important to me too, again, from an economic development perspective, which is we need more sewer. That was something I was working on. We're actually, that's another thing I'm working on, is I want to try to find some funds and see. I would love to see that sewer line connected all the way down to Attleboro. Get all of those properties on 123 sewered up. Your project's happening because of sewer.
Correct.
It wouldn't have happened without it.
Correct.
And we're getting requests from properties, up and down the street asking if sewer's coming. Property owners want to do things. That, going back to was Roger's question about vacant land. There's not much left. So to my mind, we need to start thinking about redevelopment. And redevelopment's going to be spurred by sewer. And we don't have it. This site doesn't have sewer to it. It stops at your site, at the housing authority, and there's nothing in between the housing authority to the Attleboro line. And even on Mansfield, there's no sewer between 123 and the shopping center. There may be, there's a project that's proposing it, but we don't have it. And you notice where we do have sewer, things have developed. Mansfield Ave, between the shopping center and the town line, there's some pretty significant development. Now we have private lines that were built, like Blue Star Business Park. I mean, that's 900,000 square feet of development there that happened because they built the sewer. But I think we need to be proactive. And started this conversation. I need to continue it, once one or two projects come off my plate. But I think that's crucial. And I think, we need to look at strategies how we can do that and do it, again, as a win-win. But how do we, I want to look and see how do we get more funding that can come into this town that it takes the pain points away from people who have to connect to it. And if we can take that, like, just for example, the, even, on Elm Street, even before whatever the developer's proposing, the betterment dropped because there was a $3.5 million grant that brought the betterment costs down. Now, hopefully we can get that down a whole lot more. But I want to continue to look at things like that, which is one reason I don't want to lose MassWorks. But there's other tools out there that we need to be looking at and be just more business oriented with this.
Are we in collaboration with Serpent?
Yeah.
And are they doing their job toward Norton? Because this meeting is called Focusing on Norton. And that's why we wanted you back.
Yeah.
Through Paul. Paul insisted.
Oh, I thought you meant working here, Ralph.
That's what I meant. No, we were very happy that you accepted, under whatever those conditions were, that you're back in Norton helping us. But we don't want to see you walking around humped over with bricks in your knapsack. We would rather see you get that sewerage solved. Look at Norton from 32,000 feet in the air with the help of people in your office. Mm-hmm. Because if you're a one-man team, you're going to burn out. Anybody in this room would burn out.
I wouldn't say no to it, but to answer your first question,
what can we do to help you? What can this room do to help you? Because we focus on Norton, as you do.
I'm not the budget person, but would I like another person there? A planner assistant? Or honestly, if we're getting near the holiday season, let's say you're Santa Claus, right?
Okay.
I would love to have a planner and I could shift to economic development. But I also recognize the budget constraints we have. But I would love to do 40 hours or more a week of the economic development side of it. But I have to work, we're limited on our resources, so I have to be resourceful. I'm going to keep plowing forward. Well, sometimes plow into walls and whatnot, but of my own making. But just to answer you, Serpent's been a great help. I always count on them, and they've always delivered for us. And in fact, that study I'm looking at for sewer, I've asked Serpent to give us a proposal, see if that's, because they've done similar studies for other towns. So I think they're a great resource. I think, honestly, they're my favorite consultants to
So
work
they're on
with.
your team.
Yeah.
You're reaching out, collaborating
Oh,
with them.
yeah, and they were helping us extensively on MBTA.
Pleased to
And
hear
they're
that.
still helping us on MBTA, so they helped us with the master plan, and no, we have a great relationship with them, and I just respect them and want to be able to, but we have to fund them for projects, so I need to keep a stream of, because if we don't get grant money, then I have to go to the town and ask for money, and
Well, that's
I
why
don't
we-
want to do that.
That's why we elected Michael.
Paul,
Yes.
one question I have, Alec was talking about it, is this she that's representing Reed and Barton Development, the negotiating that's going on, how many people are involved in this? It seems like everything goes through the town manager, and then that's about, I mean,
Well,
we don't want to have too many people steering the soup, but,
Right.
you know, we need to know what's going on.
So the town manager, through his responsibilities, will negotiate on behalf of the town, but then it has to go to select board,
Okay.
finance committee, and ultimately town meeting.
Because you talk about one person carrying the bag, you know?
Well, there's, like with anything, before it gets to town meeting, there's an awful lot of work nobody sees.
Right.
And that's in the case here. I mean, it's all on the up and up, it's just he has to negotiate, and there's been, that's been what's going on.
You sit in those negotiations? Or
I have,
discussions?
I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
You know, I've asked Mike so I could sit in, because I've never, for a couple of things, like when we were talking about a TIF, I've never negotiated a TIF, and I
Right,
think
right.
it's, and he's like, sure, we can do it, and then we're like, we can't do it, but, the TIF. But, again, this is a project that, I've been involved with since 2018, and, it's more than a job on this one. Even when I left, I said to Mike, I never knew I was coming back, but I said, Mike, you tell me when the ribbon cutting is, or when they start demolishing, I'll take time out of work to come out for that. We put a lot of work into it, a lot. Went on paths that didn't lead anywhere, and then some that did. And but yeah, he's working with them on it, and then and this is typical. This is nothing unusual in terms of like when a TIF is being discussed, he'll negotiate it and then work with Select Board and FinCom.
patience is not my virtue, and Alex is a year and a half is pretty quick around the corner.
Yes, sir.
The economic development side of your business, what's the status these days on solar farms? Are they still something that the town can make money on, or is it kind of phasing out? I haven't seen a lot of conversation recently, in recent years, about solar
Yeah.
farms. I know the one on Bay Road, the old Cranberry Bog, that one is kind of dead in the water, and the more you look at it, the more you probably realize it probably wasn't a good idea to begin with. But we do have other properties in town that could be
Yep.
sizable enough perhaps to put on solar farms. Is that something that could be used on marginal land in town to generate some additional
Yeah,
tax
as far as I know, it's still a viable option. And then I know the state was incentivizing a lot of rooftop solar as well. So it is something that could be. We want to be, well, in our bylaw, we allow it in the solar facilities in residential as well. So it's up to the property owner if they have a solar company to help out, so they can go forward with it.
Well, the one on Plain Street behind the school,
Yeah,
we're getting revenue from that.
right.
The one on Hill Street, we're getting revenue from that. So, and the last I knew, it was a sizable amount of money. That helps improve our tax base without really having much of an impact on the neighborhood, so
Right.
to speak. It's kind of a quiet neighbor, if you know what I mean. But if you, like cemetery, but if you have something like that works,
Right.
maybe we should be looking at some of those opportunities.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can add that to the to-do list and see, because it's certainly, that's a growing field. In fact, coincidentally, I just switched today or yesterday. You know, we now have choices of who we buy our electricity from. And they had the lowest rates, and it's 100% green. So I'm like, well, that's a win-win. So it's becoming, you know, I'd never seen that before where I've been. Well, you know, so I think it's still a pretty important field. So we can certainly look into it and see, you know, there's, you know, there may be some larger properties that could be good candidates for it. Yeah.
Paul, there's a recent project that was in front of the potential project that was in front of the planning board over the past month or so, 2 months, and it didn't work out as of yet, but it got my mind thinking, and Mike and I touched upon something relating to it yesterday when we were talking about the cumbersome type of, I guess, overall planning process, trying to get, if you're buying raw land and you're trying to develop a site. There's other municipalities that I work in, that I know Mike has as well, that they're very, let's say, developer-friendly, user-friendly. And they've adopted almost like a short list, a checklist. Not just items and, well, mostly items, but criteria for a pathway for development. And do we have a streamlined, I haven't looked at it, this is something, you know, I definitely wanted to take up with you, but I think this is a good forum now while it's top of mind. Do we have a streamlined permitting process that is conducive to almost a fast track permit for a developer if they meet all the criteria? You know, there's a short list that they meet. It's almost a pre-approval from a requirement standpoint.
Right.
And then if a special permit's needed, things of that nature, if it's fully compliant, it should be one meeting with planning board at that point. In my opinion, you know, very, very light. Let's just say light. There could be, you know, topics brought up that might be unforeseen, a change, this or that.
Yeah.
But, you know, working in towns that have a fast track, streamlined permitting process, I think maybe our system is due for maybe an upgrade of that. Are you amenable towards something of that nature?
I'm trying hard not to go to town meeting with things, but I think the bylaw needs an overhaul.
Agreed.
And so, is there a streamlined process? Not per se. It's streamlined when they don't trigger a special permit. Then it becomes more of a checklist when it's just a site plan. The challenge is in this town and in a lot of towns, there's such small thresholds to become special, to trigger a special permit. Like a 10,000 square foot building triggers a special permit. I've been in towns where 5 parking spaces triggered a special permit. That's not us, but you know, there are different triggers that if it's a special permit, then you don't fast track it. I mean, you could, but it's a discretionary approval that the board could, you know, members could say, I get it, these things checked out, but for this reason, I can't support this. Can't do that with a site plan. Site plan, if you check all the boxes, you did your traffic, you did landscaping, all that, then it gets approved. The complexity of the project also plays a role in it, because this planning board, since I've been here, they've had several projects get approved in one night. It just depends on, you know, where there are issues and, you know, where, you know, ideally when you don't really have any issues and you don't have a butters raising concerns, that usually leads to a faster approval. But when you do have a significant number of people showing up concerned about it, you've got to respect that and go forward, or listen to them and that. But processes can be updated. It would be a long process probably to get the zoning bylaw changed, but the MBTA zoning, that's a fast track. That's a fast track. No, I'm just saying that is a, you prove it by right. No, but that's an example of it. I know you meant more on the commercial side of it, but even like when we did the Village Center, down that way, I'm used to being over there and pointing that way, but the Village Center core, we did things to increase, in some cases, increase the thresholds in order to trigger a special permit. In other words, we allowed more things to be approved by site plan than say compared to village commercial zoning, which is much more conventional. So the goal with Village Center Core was to do, not only to design it better, but also to have a more efficient process that things don't trigger, like for example, common driveways trigger a special permit, but not in Village Center Core. We wrote it that it was just a site plan approval. I'd like to see it, but as you know, when you go through town meeting, it's a gauntlet. And if you think MBTA is tough,
I don't disagree. I just see, I do see, that those types of projects, those are the ones that create tax revenue. Those are the ones that bring in the dough to pay for all these incidentals, everything.
Yeah.
They help the budget. And, the, for lack of a better term, the regulations, the requirements, I think they can be burdensome, and they are a deterrent to development. It's not just sewer. That, the lack of sewer. I think several factors involved in those particular two are the contributing factors to, lack of strong commercial and, we don't have
Sure.
much industrial, but, those are very strong contributing factors to guys that don't want to. They can go.
Sure.
The surrounding towns, they're very receptive to that kind of stuff, and our bylaws aren't as accepting. Everything's by special permit.
Yeah, a lot of it is. Agreed.
And I
Yeah.
think that's very restrictive. That's my personal view on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if I'm hearing you right, it's like if it's the right project in the right place, have a simpler process for it. I agree with that.
Sure.
I agree with it, and if it's not, it should be a tougher threshold to achieve it. But yeah, I've always, Norton's not alone in this, but I go, special permits to me should be the exception. Just my way of thinking about it, but and it, you're right, to use it in places, sparingly in places where you really want it, unless it's something causing an unforeseen problem. But yeah, I'm with you. That if we go that route, it's going to take a while to get that all worked out, and it's probably worth the fight. We've got a few other things first, but I've got to stay focused on a couple things because we also have that recodification going forward in the spring too. So
We know you're only one guy, we get
yeah,
it.
just listen to Ralph. Just listen to what Ralph said before. That's all.
Thank you, everyone,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
thank you, Paul, for coming.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, and
Thank you.